In 2023, the French government proposed a reform of the retirement system, which sparked a wave of protests and strikes. The law on retirement reform was officially adopted on March 20, 2023, and will come into effect on September 1. The French government has passed a reform of the retirement system through the use of Article 49.3 of the Constitution. The reform was debated in the National Assembly in February and adopted on March 20 as part of a supplementary budget bill for the social security system. The reform aims to balance the retirement system and finance new expenses, such as the revaluation of minimum pensions. The changes are set to take effect in September. The legal retirement age will be gradually increased from 62 to 64 years old, starting on September 1, 2023. The age of retirement will be delayed by 3 months for those born on September 1, 1961. And the generation born in 1965 will have to work until they are 63 years and 3 months old by 2027. The generation born in 1968 will have to work until they are 64 years old by 2030. Additionally, it should be noted that the possibility of working until the age of 70 will be systematically implemented in the public sector. The French retirement system has undergone significant reforms. Starting from the 1965 generation, workers will need to have contributed for 43 years instead of 42 to benefit from a full pension. Additionally, women are penalized by the increase of the retirement age, as they tend to have more career interruptions than men. On the other hand, family-related leaves, such as maternity or paternity, and caregiving will be taken into account in the pension calculation, with a maximum of 4 quarters. The minimum pension will be raised to almost €1,200 per month and should concern around 200,000 new retirees each year from September 2023. However, part-time or intermittent careers are excluded from this measure. The 1965 and 1966 generations are the most impacted by these reforms, having to work 3 additional quarters. The retirement system will also improve the management of long careers and consider the difficulty of some occupations. Finally, workers in specific sectors, such as the electrical and gas industries, the RATP, notaries, or the Banque de France, will be affiliated with the general regime starting on September 1, 2023. The movement was organized by an inter-union initiative that brought together 8 unions: CGT, CFDT, FO, CFECGC, CFTC, UNSA, Solidaires, and FSU. The first strike call on January 19 saw a strong mobilization in the energy, EDF, NG, GRDF, Enedis, refineries, transportation, SNCF, RATP, education, and public sectors. Despite the large turnout in demonstrations, the government refused to back down on its plan to increase the legal retirement age to 64, which was denounced by the unions. The January 19 strike was the largest mobilization in 30 years, with 1.12 to 2 million participants. On January 31, a second day of protests saw an increased turnout of 1.27 million participants, according to the Ministry of the Interior, and 2.5 to 2.8 million, according to the unions. On February 7, the third day of protests, 757,000 people demonstrated according to the Ministry of the Interior, and nearly 2 million, according to the CGT. On February 11, more than 2.5 million people demonstrated according to the CGT, while the Ministry of the Interior reported 963,000. In addition, the RATP inter-union called for an indefinite strike starting on March 7. On March 7, the inter-union called for a massive nationwide strike, and it was the biggest day of mobilization in over 40 years in France, surpassing the numbers of January 31. Indefinite strikes were declared in sectors such as transportation, SNCF, RATP, refineries, chemicals, ports, and docks. On March 25, the French Prime Minister, Elisabeth Borne, said that the retirement reform was wanted by the majority of French people and that she had made all necessary compromises for its success. She also stated that she would not back down on the reform. Nevertheless, the unions insisted on continuing to protest against the reform. A new demonstration took place on March 28, with a lower turnout than previous events. President Emmanuel Macron agreed to discuss various projects with the unions but refused to abandon the retirement reform presented by Borne in mid-March 2023. How this social movement's impact on tourism. The social movements and strikes in France in 2023 could have a significant impact on tourism. The disruptions in transportation, such as train and metro strikes, could cause inconvenience and frustration for tourists traveling within the country. Additionally, the protests and rallies could lead to the closure of major tourist attractions and businesses, resulting in a decrease in tourist activity. This could have a negative impact on the tourism industry and the overall economy. However, it's important to note that the extent of the impact would depend on the duration and intensity of the strikes and protests. Social protests. The image of France as a destination is once again tarnished. A press article discusses the impact of ongoing social movements and protests on France's tourism industry. The article highlights that despite positive indicators in the industry such as a 17.5% increase in RevPAR, revenue per available room, in January 2023, compared to 2019 and an 82% occupancy rate of accommodations in mountain resorts in March 2023, there is concern about the impact of social protests on tourism. Frequent strikes and protests, particularly related to pension reform, have led to images of trash-filled streets and violence being circulated globally, potentially damaging the image of France as a tourist destination. The Minister for Tourism, Olivier Grégoire, expressed concern about the potential economic impact of these protests on the tourism industry, including in commerce, hotels, and restaurants. Many of professionals in tourism sector are really worried about this situation on how to maintain a positive image for France as a tourist destination. And the need for authorities to find a balance between respecting the right to protest and ensuring the safety and comfort of tourists. What are your thoughts? Please share.